Hey y'all, welcome back to Storytime with Miss Melinda. Today we are reading the very first Hugo Award for Best Short Story, given in 1955 to Eric Frank Russell for Allamagoosa. Eric Frank Russell was a British fellow who became popular in science fiction, both in Britain and the United States, and is a historic science fiction writer for winning the very first Hugo Award. So, without further ado, let us read Allamagoosa. Allamagoosa by Eric Frank Russell. It was a long time since the bustler had been so silent. She lay in the Syrian spaceport, her tubes cold, her shell particle scarred, her air that of a long distance runner exhausted at the end of a marathon. There was good reason for this. She had returned from a lengthy trip, by no means devoid of troubles. Now, in port, well-deserved rest had been gained, if only temporarily. Peace, sweet peace. No more bothers, no more crises, no more major upsets, no more dire predicaments such as crop up in free flight at least twice a day. Just peace. Captain McNaught reposed in his cabin, feet up on desk, and enjoyed the relaxation to the utmost. The engines were dead, their hellish pounding absent for the first time in months. Out there in the big city, 400 of his crew were making whoopee under a brilliant sun. This evening, when First Officer Gregory returned to take charge, he was going to go into the fragrant twilight and make the rounds of neon-lit civilization. That was the beauty of making landfall at long last. Men could give way to themselves, blow off surplus steam, each according to his fashion. No duties, no worries, no dangers, no responsibilities in spaceport. A haven of safety and comfort for tired rovers. Again. Ha! Berman, the chief radio officer, entered the cabin. He was one of the half-dozen remaining on duty and bore the expression of a man who can think of 20 better things to do. Relayed signal just come in, sir. Handing the paper across, he waited for the other to look at it and perhaps dictate a reply. Taking the sheet, McNaught removed the feet from his desk, sat erect, and read the message aloud. Terran headquarters to Bustler. Remain Sirreport pending further orders. Rear Admiral Vane W. Cassidy due there 17th. Feldman, Navy Op Command, Sirisak. He looked up, all happiness gone from his leathery features, and groaned. Something wrong? Asked Berman, vaguely alarmed. McNaught pointed at 3 thin books on his desk. The middle one, page 20. Leafing through it, Berman found an item that said Vane W. Cassidy, R.Ad., Head Inspector, Ships and Stores. Berman swallowed hard. Does that mean... Yes, it does, said McNaught without pleasure. Back to training college and all its rigmarole. Paint and soap, spit and polish. He put on an officious expression, adopted a voice to match it. Captain, you have only $7.99 emergency rations. Your allocation is 800. Nothing in your logbook accounts for the missing one. Where is it? What happened to it? How is it that one of the men's kit lacks an officially issued pair of suspenders? Did you report his loss? Why does he pick on us? Asked Berman, appalled. He's never jivvied us before. That's why, informed McNaught, scowling at the wall. It's our turn to be stretched across the barrel. His gaze found the calendar. We have 3 days, and we'll need 'em. Tell Second Officer Pike to come here at once. Berman departed gloomily. In short time, Pike entered. His face reaffirmed the old adage that bad news travels fast. Make out an indent, ordered McNaught, for 100 gallons of plastic paint, navy gray, approved quality. Make out another for 30 gallons of interior white enamel. Take them to spaceport stores right away. Tell them to deliver by 6 this evening, along with our correct issue of brushes and sprayers. Grab up any cleaning material that's going for free. The men won't like this, remarked Pike feebly. They're going to love it, McNaught asserted. A bright and shiny ship, all spick and span, is good for morale. It says so in that book. Get moving and put those indents in. When you come back, find the stores and equipment sheets and bring them here. We've got to check stocks before Cassidy arrives. Once he's here, we'll have no chance to make up shortages or smuggle out any extra items we happen to find in our hands. Very well, sir. Pike went out wearing the same expression as Berman's. Lying back in his chair, McNaught muttered to himself. There was a feeling in his bones that something was sure to cause a last-minute ruckus. A shortage of any item would be serious enough unless covered by a previous report. A surplus would be bad, very bad. The former implied carelessness or misfortune. The latter suggested barefaced theft of government property in circumstances condoned by the commander. For instance, there was that recent case of Williams of the heavy cruiser Swift. He'd heard of it over the space vine when out around Boots. Williams had been found in unwitting command of 11 reels of electric fence wire when his official issue was 10. It had taken a court martial to decide that the extra reel, which had formidable barter value on a certain planet, had not been stolen from space stores or, in sailor jargon, teleportated aboard. But Williams had been reprimanded, and that did not help promotion. He was still rumbling discontentedly when Pike returned bearing a folder of foolscap sheets. Going to start right away, sir. We'll have to. He heaved himself erect, mentally bid goodbye to time off and a taste of the bright lights. It'll take long enough to work right through from bow to tail. I'll leave the men's kit inspection to the last. Marching out of the cabin, he set forth toward the bow, Pike following with broody reluctance. As they passed the open main lock, Peaslake observed them, bounded eagerly up the gangway, and joined them. A Puka member of the crew, he was a large dog, whose ancestors had been more enthusiastic than selective. He wore with pride a big collar inscribed, Peaslake, property of S.S. Butler. His chief duties, ably performed, were to keep alien rodents off the ship, and, on rare occasions, smell out dangers not visible to human eyes. The three paraded forward, McNaught and Pike in the manner of men grimly sacrificing pleasure for the sake of duty, Peaslake with the panting willingness of one ready for any new game, no matter what. Reaching the bow cabin, McNaught dumped himself in the pilot's seat, took the folder from the other. You know this stuff better than me. The chart room is where I shine, so I'll read them out while you look them over. He opened the folder, started on the first page. K1, beam compass, type D, one of. Check, said Pike. K2, distance and direction indicator, electronic, type JJ, one of. Check. K3, port and starboard gravitic meters, Cassini models, one pair. Check. Peaslake planted his head in McNaught's lap, blinked soulfully, and whined. He was beginning to get the other's viewpoint. This tedious itemizing and checking was a hell of a game. McNaught consolingly lowered a hand and played with Peaslake's ears while he plowed his way down the list. K187, foam rubber cushions, pilot and co-pilot, one pair. Check. By the time First Officer Gregory appeared, they had reached the tiny intercom cubby and poked around it in semi-darkness. Peaslake had long departed in disgust. M24, spare mini speakers, 3-inch, type T2, one set of 6. Check. Looking in, Gregory popped his eyes and said, "What's going on?" "Major inspection due soon." McNaught glanced at his watch. "Go see if Stores has delivered a load, and if not, why not? Then you'd better give me a hand and let Pike take a few hours off." "Does this mean land leave is canceled?" "You bet it does, until after His Honor has been and gone." He glanced at Pike. When you get into the city, search around and send back any of the crew you can find. No arguments, no excuses. Also, no alibis and or delays. It's an order. Pike registered unhappiness. Gregory glowered at him, went away, came back, and said, "Stores will have the stuff here in 20 minutes' time." With bad grace, he watched Pike depart. M47, intercom cable, woven wire, protected, 3 drums. Check, said Gregory, mentally kicking himself for returning at the wrong time. The task continued until late in the evening, was resumed early next morning. By that time, 3/4 of the men were hard at work inside and outside the vessel, doing their jobs as though sentenced to them for crimes contemplated, but not yet committed. Moving around the ship's corridors and catwalks had to be done crab fashion, with a nervous sidewise edging. Once again, it was being demonstrated that the Terran life forms suffer from ye fear of wet paint. The first smearer would have 10 years willed off his unfortunate life. It was in these conditions, in mid-afternoon of the second day, that McNaught's bones proved their feelings had been prophetic. He recited the 9th page, while Jean Blancard confirmed the presence and actual existence of all items enumerated. 2/3 of the way down, they hit the rocks, metaphorically speaking, and commenced to sink fast. McNaught said boredly, V1097, drinking bowl, enamel, 1 of. Is this? Said Blanchard, tapping it. V1098, Ophog, 1. Quoi? Said Blanchard, staring. V1098, Ophog, 1, repeated McNaught. Well, why are you looking thunderstruck? This is the ship's galley. You're the head cook. You know what's supposed to be in the galley, don't you? Where's this Ophog? Never heard of him, stated Blanchard, flatly. You must have. It's on this equipment sheet, in plain, clear type. Ophog, 1, it says. It was here when we were fitted out 4 years ago. We checked it ourselves and signed for it. I signed for nothing's called Ophog, Blanchard denied. In the cuisine, here, there is no such thing. Look, McNaught scowled and showed him the sheet. Blanchard looked and sniffed disdainfully. I have here the electronic oven, 1 of. I have jacketed boilers, graduated capacities, 1 set. I have bain-marie pans, 6 of. But no Ophog. Never heard of him. I do not know of him. He spread his hands and shrugged. No Ophog. There's got to be, McNaught insisted. What's more, when Cassidy arrives, there'll be hell to pay if there isn't. You find him, Blanchard suggested. You got a certificate from the International Hotel School of Cookery. You got a certificate from the Cordon Bleu College of Cuisine. You got a certificate with 3 credits from the Space Navy Feeding Center, McNaught pointed out. All that, and you don't know what an Ophog is? Nom du chien, ejaculated Blanchard, waving his arms around. I tell you 10,000 times, there is no Ophog. There never was an Ophog. Escoffier himself could not find the Ophog, of which there is none. Am I a magician, perhaps? It's part of the culinary equipment, McNaught maintained. It must be because it's on page 9. And page 9 means its proper home is in the galley, care of the head cook. Like hell it does, Blanchard retorted. He pointed at a metal box on the wall. Intercom booster. Is that mine? McNaught thought it over, conceded. No, it's Berman's. His stuff rambles all over the ship. Then ask him for this bloody Ophog, said Blanchard triumphantly. I will. If it's not yours, it must be his. Let's finish this checking first. If I'm not systematic and thorough, Cassidy will jerk off my insignia. His eyes sought the list. V1099. Inscribed collar, leather, brass-studded, dog, for the use of. No need to look for that. I saw it myself 5 minutes ago. He ticked the item, continued. V11100. Sleeping basket, woven reed, 1 of. Is this, said Blanchard, kicking it into a corner. V1101. Cushion, foam rubber to fit sleeping basket, 1 of. Half of, Blanchard contradicted. In 4 years, he has chewed away the other half. Maybe Cassidy will let us indent for a new one. It doesn't matter. We're okay so long as we can produce the half we've got. McNaught stood up, closed the folder. That's the lot for here. I'll go see Berman about this missing item. The inventory party moved on. Berman switched off a UHF receiver, removing his earplugs and raising a questioning eyebrow. In the galley we're short an offog, explained McNaught. Where is it? Why ask me? The galley is Blanchard's bailiwick. Not entirely. A lot of your cables run through it. You have 2 terminal boxes in there, also an automatic switch and an intercom booster. Where's the offog? Never heard of it, said Berman, baffled. McNaught shouted, Don't tell me that! I am already fed up hearing Blanchard say it. 4 years back, we had an offog. It says so here. This is our copy of what we checked and signed for. It says we signed for an offog. Therefore, we must have one. It's got to be found before Cassidy gets here. Sorry, sir, sympathized Berman. I can't help you. You can think again, advised McNaught. Up in the bow, there's a direction and a distance indicator. What do you call it? A Diden, said Berman, mystified. And McNaught went on, pointing at the pulse transmitter. What do you call that? The Opera Popper. Baby names, see? Diden and Opera Popper. Now rack your brains and remember what you called an offog 4 years ago. Nothing, asserted Berman, has ever been called an offog to my knowledge. Then demanded McNaught, why did we sign for one? I didn't sign for anything. You did all the signing. While you and the others did the checking. 4 years ago, presumably in the galley, I said, offog 1, and either you or Blanchard pointed to it and said, check. I took somebody's word for it. I have to take other specialists' words for it. I am an expert navigator, familiar with all the latest navigational gadgets, but not with other stuff. So I'm compelled to rely on people who know what an offog is, or ought to. Berman had a bright thought. All kinds of oddments were dumped in the main lock, the corridors, and the galley when we were fitted out. We had to sort through a deal of stuff and stash it where it properly belonged, remember? This offog thing might be any place today. It isn't necessarily my responsibility or Blanchard's. I'll see what the other officers say, agreed McNaught, conceding the point. Gregory, Worth, Sanderson, or one of the others may be coddling the item. Wherever it is, it's got to be found, or accounted for in full if it's been expended. He went out. Berman pulled a face, inserted his earplugs, resumed fiddling with his apparatus. An hour later, McNaught came back wearing a scowl. Positively, he now announced with ire, there is no such thing on the ship. Nobody knows of it. Nobody can so much as guess at it. Cross it off and report it as lost, Berman suggested. What, when we're hard aground? You know as well as I do that loss and damage must be signaled at time of occurrence. If I tell Cassidy the offog went west in space, he'll want to know when, where, how, and why it wasn't signaled. There will be a real ruckus if the contraption happens to be valued at 500,000 credits. I can't dismiss it with an airy wave of the hand. What's the answer then? Inquired Berman, innocently ambling straight into the trap. There's one and only one, McNaught announced. You will manufacture an offog. Who? Me? Said Berman, twitching his scalp. You and no other. I'm fairly sure the thing is your pigeon anyway. Why? Because it's typical of the baby names used for your kind of stuff. I will bet a month's pay that an offog is some sort of scientific Allamagoosa. Something to do with fog, perhaps. Maybe a blind approach gadget. The blind approach transceiver is called the Fumbly, Berman informed. There you are, McNaught said, as if that clinched it. So you will make an offog. It will be complete by 6 tomorrow evening and ready for my inspection then. It had better be convincing. In fact, pleasing. In fact, its function will be convincing. Berman stood up, let his hands dangle, and said in hoarse tones, How can I make an offer when I don't even know what it is? Neither does Cassidy know, McNaught pointed out, leering at him. He's more of a quantity surveyor than anything else. As such, he counts things, looks at things, certifies that they exist, accepts advice on whether they are functionally satisfactory or worn out. All we need to do is concoct an imposing Allamagoosa and tell him it's the Offog. Holy Moses, said Berman fervently. Let us not rely on the dubious assistance of biblical characters, McNaught reproved. Let us use the brains that God has given us. Get a grip on your soldering iron and make a top-notch offog by 6 tomorrow evening. That's an order. He departed, satisfied with the solution. Behind him, Berman gloomed at the wall and licked his lips once, twice. Rear Admiral Vane W. Cassidy arrived right on time. He was a short, paunchy character with a florid complexion and eyes like those of a long-dead fish. His gait was an important strut. Ah, Captain, I trust that you have everything ship-ship. Everything usually is, assured McNaught glibly. I see to that. He spoke with conviction. Good, approved Cassidy. I like a commander who takes his responsibilities seriously. Much as I regret saying so, there are a few who do not. He marched through the main lock, his caught eyes taking note of the fresh white enamel. Where do you prefer to start, bow or tail? My equipment sheets run from bow backward. We may as well deal with them in the way they're set. Very well. He trotted officiously toward the nose, paused on the way to pat Peace Lake and examine his collar. Well cared for, I see. Has the animal proved useful? He saved 5 lives on Mardia by barking a warning. The details have been entered in your log, I suppose? Yes, sir. The log is in the chart room, awaiting your inspection. We'll get to it in due time. Reaching the bow cabin, Cassidy took a seat, accepted the folder from McNaught. It started off at a businesslike pace. K1, beam compass, type D, 1 of. This is it, sir, said McNaught, showing him. Still working properly? Yes, sir. They carried on, reached the intercom cubby, the computer room, a succession of other places back to the galley. Here, Blanchard posed in freshly laundered white clothes and eyed the newcomer warily. V147, electronic oven, 1 of. Is this, said Blanchard, pointing with disdain. Satisfactory? Inquired Cassidy, giving him the fishy eye. Not big enough, declared Blanchard. He encompassed the entire galley with an expressive gesture. Nothing's big enough. Place too small. Everything's too small. I am chef de cuisine, and she is like a cuisine, like an attic. This is a warship, not a luxury liner, Cassidy snapped. He frowned at the equipment sheet. V148, timing device, electronic oven, attachment thereto, 1 of. Is this, spat Blanchard, ready to sling it through the nearest port if Cassidy would first donate the 2 pins. Working his way down the sheet, Cassidy got nearer and nearer while nervous tension built up. Then he reached the critical point and said, V1098, Offog, 1. Morbleu, said Blanchard, shooting sparks from his eyes. I have say before and say again, there never was. The Offog is in the radio room, sir. McNaught chipped in hurriedly. Indeed, Cassidy took another look at the sheet. Then why is it recorded along with galley equipment? It was placed in the galley at time of fitting out, sir. It's one of those portable instruments left to us to fix up where most suitable. Then it should have been transferred to the radio room list. Why didn't you transfer it? I thought it better to wait for your authority to do so, sir. The fish eyes registered gratification. Yes, that is quite proper of you, Captain. I will transfer it now. He crossed the item from sheet 9, initialed it, entered it on sheet 16, initialed that. V1099, inscribed collar, leather. Oh yes, I've seen that. The dog was wearing it. He ticked it. An hour later, he strutted into the radio room. Berman stood up, squared his shoulders, but could not keep his feet or hands from fidgeting. His eyes protruded slightly and kept straying towards McNaught in a silent appeal. He was like a man wearing a porcupine in his breeches. V1098, Offog, 1, said Cassidy in his usual tone of brooking no nonsense. Moving with the jerkiness of a slightly uncoordinated robot, Berman pawed a small box fronted with dials, switches, and colored lights. It looked like a radio ham's idea of a fruit machine. He knocked down a couple of switches. The lights came on, played around in intriguing combinations. This is it, sir, he informed with difficulty. Ah, Cassidy left his chair and moved across for a closer look. I don't recall having seen this item before, but there are so many different models of the same things. Is it still operating efficiently? Yes, sir. It's one of the most useful things in the ship, contributed McNaught for good measure. What does it do? Inquired Cassidy, inviting Berman to cast a pearl of wisdom before him. Berman paled. Hastily, McNaught said, a full explanation would be rather involved and technical, but to put it as simply as possible, it enables us to strike a balance between opposing gravitational fields. Variations in lights indicate the extent and degree of unbalance at any given time. It's a clever idea, added Berman, made suddenly reckless by this news, based on Finagle's constant. I see, said Cassidy, not seeing at all. He resumed his seat, ticked the ophog, and carried on. Z44, switchboard, automatic, 40-line intercom, 1 of. Here it is, sir. Cassidy glanced at it, returned his gaze to the sheet. The others used his momentary distraction to mop perspiration from their foreheads. Victory had been gained. All was well. For the third time. Ha! Rear Admiral Vane W. Cassidy departed, pleased and complimentary. Within 1 hour, the crew bolted to town. McNaught took turns with Gregory at enjoying the gay lights. For the next 5 days, all was peace and pleasure. On the 6th day, Berman brought in a signal, dumped it upon McNaught's desk, and waited for the reaction. He had an air of gratification, the pleasure of one whose virtue is about to be rewarded. Terran headquarters to Bustler. Return here immediately for overhaul and refitting. Improved power plant to be installed. Feldman, Navy Op, Command, Sirasek. Back to Terra, commented McNaught happily. And an overhaul will mean at least 1 month's leave. He eyed Berman. Tell all officers on duty to go to town at once and order the crew aboard. The men will come running when they know why. Yes, sir, said Berman, grinning. Everyone was still grinning 2 weeks later when the sea report had receded far behind and Sol had grown to a vague speck in the sparkling mist of the bow starfield. 11 weeks still to go, but it was worth it. Back to Terra! Hurrah! In the captain's cabin, the grins abruptly vanished one evening when Berman suddenly developed the willies. He marched in, chewed his bottom lip while waiting for McNaught to finish writing in the log. Finally, McNaught pushed the book away, glanced up, frowned. What's the matter with you? Got a bellyache or something? No, sir, I've been thinking. Does it hurt that much? I've been thinking, persisted Berman in funereal tones. We're going back for overhaul. You know what that means? We'll walk off the ship, and a horde of experts will walk onto it. He stared tragically at the other. Experts, I said. Naturally, they'll be experts, McNaught agreed. Equipment cannot be tested and brought up to scratch by a bunch of dopes. It will require more than a mere expert to bring the ophog up to scratch, Berman pointed out. It'll need a genius. McNaught rocked back, swapped expressions like changing masks. Jumping Judas! I'd forgotten all about that thing. When we get to Terra, we won't blind those boys with science. No, sir, we won't, endorsed Berman. He did not add any more, but his face shouted aloud, You got me into this. You get me out of it. He waited a time while McNaught did some intense thinking, then prompted, What do you suggest, sir? Slowly, the satisfied smile returned to McNaught's features as he answered, Break up the contraption and feed it into the disintegrator. But that doesn't solve the problem, said Berman. We'll still be short an ophog. No, we won't, because I'm going to signal its loss owing to the hazards of space service. He closed one eye in an emphatic wink. We're in free flight right now. He reached for a message pad and scribbled on it while Berman stood by, vastly relieved. Bustler to Terran headquarters. Item V1098, UFOG 1, came apart under gravitational stress while passing through Twin Sun Field, Hector Major Minor. Material used as fuel. McNaught, Commander, Bustler. Berman took it to the radio room and beamed it earthward. All was peace and progress for another 2 days. The next time he went to the captain's cabin, he went running and worried. "General call, sir," he announced breathlessly and thrust the message into the other's hands. "Terran headquarters for relay all sectors. Urgent and important. All ships grounded forthwith. Vessels in flight under official orders will make for nearest spaceport pending further instructions. Welling, alarm and rescue. Command, Terra." "Something's gone bust," commented McNaught, undisturbed. He traipsed to the chart room, Berman following. Consulting the charts, he dialed the intercom phone, got Pike in the bow, and ordered, "There's a panic. All ships grounded. We've got to make for Zaxted about 3 days run away. Change course at once. Starboard 17 degrees, declination 10. Then he cut off, griped. Bang goes that sweet month on Terra. I never did like Zaxted either. It stinks. The crew will feel murderous about this, and I don't blame them." "What do you think has happened, sir?" asked Berman. He looked both uneasy and annoyed. "Heaven alone knows. The last general call was 7 years ago when the Star Rider exploded halfway along the Mars run. They grounded every ship in existence while they investigated the cause." He rubbed his chin, pondered, went on. "And the call before that one was when the entire crew of the blowgun went nuts. Whatever it is this time, you can bet it's serious." "It wouldn't be the start of a space war?" "Against whom?" McNaught made a gesture of contempt. "Nobody has the ships with which to oppose us. No, it's something technical. We'll learn of it eventually. They'll tell us before we reach Zaxted or soon afterward." They did tell him, within 6 hours. Berman rushed in with face full of horror. "What's eating you now?" demanded McNaught, staring at him. "The off-fog," stuttered Berman. He made motions as though brushing off invisible spiders. "What of it?" "It's a typographical error. In your copy, it should read off dog." "Off?" The commander stared owlishly. "Off dog?" echoed McNaught, making it sound like foul language. "See for yourself." Dumping the signal on the desk, Berman bolted out, left the door swinging. McNaught scowled after him, picked up the message. "Terran headquarters to Bustler. Your report V1098, ship's official dog, Peaslake. Detail fully circumstances and manner in which animal came apart under gravitational stress. Cross-examine crew and signal all coincidental symptoms experienced by them. Urgent and important. Welling, alarm and rescue, command, Terra." In the privacy of his cabin, McNaught commenced to eat his nails. Every now and again, he went a little cross-eyed as he examined them for nearness to the flesh. The end. All right, y'all. Thanks so much for joining me for story time with Miss Melinda. This was Allamagoosa, the 1955 Hugo Award winner. Allamagoosa, the 1955 Hugo Award winner. If you enjoy Storytime, please like, please subscribe, and please stay tuned. I will post more, hopefully every Monday and Wednesday. Thank you. Have a great evening. Good night, y'all.